Good morning. I'm Nakul Khandelwal. I'm a director of product at Qualys. And today, the topic of my presentation is how do you build a risk operation center and have a proactive approach to cybersecurity risk. The agenda for today is divided into 4 parts. We're going to talk about some of the growing complexities of cybersecurity landscape across organizations, be it private sector, public sector, non-profits, followed by what is the need of a risk operation center. This is where I'm going to draw an analogy with a security operation center that most of you would be familiar with already, and how a risk operation center can be deployed within your organizations, followed by how Qualys can potentially help you manage cybersecurity risk in a very holistic manner. And lastly, we're going to conclude with one of our cutting edge and latest innovations in the area of securing your LLM workload. So let's get started. What I want to talk about first is some of the key challenges that organizations globally are facing today. One of them is because of digital transformation, the attack surface is expanding, and the attack surface is expanding in all sorts of directions. It's not just limited to your traditional IT infrastructure, but the attack surface is expanding to hardware, software, OT, IoT, your SaaS applications, and now your AI workloads. And one of the recent surveys that was done by leading analyst agencies determined that on an average, organizations have been using 70 cybersecurity products in their environment. And all of these products have been creating security silos and having their own specialized area that they work on. And I'm sure all of you would be aware with some of the terminologies on the right hand side here, with things like cloud security posture management, data security posture management, SaaS security, and so on and so forth. And the rise of these specialized tools have really led to creating security silos where you don't have a single single pane of glass. I don't like this terminology, but it fits really well here. A single pane of glass view that allows you to manage risk in a very holistic manner. Along with rising attack surfaces, the next challenge is rising types of risk that are a result of these attack surfaces. So it's not just related to vulnerabilities anymore. You have misconfigurations, you have identity risks, you have risks coming from, for example, cloud misconfigurations, endpoint malicious activities, applications, risks on your web applications, and so on and so forth. And all of these risk factors essentially lead to impacting the overall enterprise risk of your enterprise. And the need for you to be able to communicate this risk, not just to the security leadership of your organization, but to your development teams, IT teams, your board. These days, a lot of CISOs have been increasingly requested by a board to give a holistic view of cybersecurity posture within their organizations, and what are they really doing to be able to manage this risk effectively. And lastly, I want to talk about in terms of challenges is the evolving role of vulnerability management teams, which has really evolved from scanning and patching your traditional IT infrastructure to working in tandem with the asset owners to really mitigate risk at the source and mitigate some of these security findings at the source. This has led to, in most organizations, evolution of cyber risk operations in general as compared to very traditional IT security, scanning and patching. Considering all of these challenges, what I want to talk about is Risk Operations Center very briefly. And to explain the concept of Risk Operations Center, I want to draw a quick analogy with Security Operations Center, which I was talking about earlier, which is nothing but essentially the ability for you to aggregate the threat information to be able to ultimately understand the indicators of compromise and have a coordinated response in place for the events and incidents that have really happened within your infrastructure. However, this is all mostly reactive. The need of the hour today is for you to be able to shift left and really understand what are the risks that are ultimately leading to these events and leading to these threats happening in your organization. And a risk operations center, in theory, can allow you to be able to aggregate all of the indicators of exposure within your organization. And these indicators of exposure are your vulnerabilities, your misconfigurations, your identity risks, the malwares that are present in one of your or more of your assets, to be able to get to a risk posture and have a coordinated response in place. This is something that has been evolving in the last couple of years, more so because most of the regulators have been pushing for a better risk management across enterprises. CISOs have been asked by the board or the CEO to provide a better view of risk within organizations. With that, I want to quickly talk about Qualys's offering, which is called Enterprise True Risk Management, which allows you to effectively measure, communicate, and eliminate risk across your organization. I'm going to talk about some key components of how it really works, and you can use the same principles to be able to effectively manage risk and reduce those security silos in your organization. So it all starts with unifying your asset inventory. Even the largest of the enterprises today, if you're going to ask them, they would not know the full view of their asset inventory, and it becomes imperative for organizations to really understand what is their asset inventory landscape, not just in terms of IT inventory, but being able to get hold of their softwares, their SaaS applications, their OT, IoT, and so on and so forth. And what Qualys ETM does using API-based integrations is allow you to unify your asset inventory, followed by aggregation of all of the security findings on these attack surfaces. So you might be using all of the specialized tools that I was talking about earlier. What Qualys ETM allows you to do is being able to use API-based integrations to aggregate all of the assets as well as their associated findings into a single platform. But it just doesn't end here. Aggregation never solves a problem. What we really try to do is, on top of aggregation of these security findings, we integrate with 25 plus global leading threat intel feeds such as Record Future, Reversing Labs, so on and so forth, to be able to enrich your security findings and to be able to give you the view of these security findings and how an attacker can potentially exploit these vulnerabilities. Things like if a particular vulnerability is a CISA known KV, if it is being exploited in the wild, what kind of threat actors are targeting those security findings, if there's a POC exploit available for that vulnerability, if it is trending in the wild, and so on and so forth. Once you have aggregated all of your assets and vulnerabilities, we really allow you to be able to marry that with the business context. So it's essential for effective risk management is for you to not just understand the security risks that come from your attack surfaces, but also understand the business context. Things like what is the business value of each of your what is the business value for each of your assets or business units or applications, and so on and so forth. And finally, being able to get a quantifiable metric to understand risk both at a macro level and at a micro level, for you to be able to not just understand what is your current risk posture, but how can you reduce risk effectively by measuring it. And lastly, and probably one of the most important things is ability for you to reduce the risk, because for you to be able to effectively manage the risk, you need to be able to reduce it effectively. And what you really need to do is have a holistic approach to risk reduction, not just the ability for you to prioritize risks within your organization, but also being able to act on them in a timely manner, not just by deploying patches, but of course by deploying other kinds of mitigations, compensatory controls, deploying virtual patches, and so on and so forth. So all of these things are available in the Qualys platform. And finally, being able to create reports both internally for within your organization, or for your board, or for your regulators. So this is a brief of how a risk operations center can essentially be enabled in one of your organizations. And to summarize, what Qualys Enterprise True Risk Management really is a data fabric which allows you to have a coordinated response to risk within your organization. We have amazing partnerships with some of the leading cloud security vendors such as Wiz, Prisma Cloud, leading endpoint security vendors such as CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Symantec, to be able to develop these API-based integrations that allow you to consolidate all of your assets and security findings and have a coordinated response to risk from within your organization. With that, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about some of the cutting edge work we've been doing in the area of AI. And a lot of my co-speakers have been talking today about the rise of AI within India, not just globally. And during the explosion of, because of the explosion of ChatGPT a few years back, most of us have had the first-hand opportunity to work with AI and to be able to use AI. And the use cases are very broad. AI in general is a very broad term, and I want to focus on a particular aspect of AI today in my presentation, which is the usage of large language models, which is in short called LLMs, which is what is powering ChatGPT and many other models that we use today. Now, LLMs essentially allows you to be able to create features such as text generation, summarization, translation, having applications and support, and across industry. And we've been interacting with LLMs more than we really know. A lot of our interactions with LLM are unknown, and we don't even know if we're interacting with these LLMs. And that is one of the reasons it's really essential for enterprises and other organizations to be able to not just secure their LLM workloads, but the first step would be to identify if they're using or if they have already deployed some of these LLM workloads. There are many challenges with AI. A lot of my co-speakers today have covered, such as biases that comes with LLMs, the lack of transparency, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to talk about some of these challenges and how we can help you mitigate some of these challenges using Qualys platform today. Now, when we look at the use of LLM across enterprises, I would divide it into two buckets overall. The first is where your employees are using LLMs within your organizations. So these could be employees using tools like ChatGPT, or developers. Sorry, just a second. Or your developers using LLMs built into their coding tools. And the second bucket, and this is what we call consumers of LLM. Second bucket is where you have embedded LLMs within your product. It could be your banking application, it could be your insurance product, it could be your customer support tool. This is where you have deployed LLM within your product or a service which is interfacing with your customers and your partners. This is what we call the creators of LLM, and this is what the focus is for the rest of my presentation. And when you talk about creators of LLM, Dr. Duggal, I believe, spoke about this statistic that 90% of organizations plan to deploy LLM in the next 2 years. My statistic says 70% wants to deploy it in the next 1 year, which I think is correlating with that statistic. And but what is really happening is, while these LLMs are being deployed in your products and services, the developers are not letting the security teams know. They don't know if the LLM is being deployed or is part of your products and services, which has led to most security teams being blindsided. Already the technology is very new, and there's very low awareness of how LLMs, what kind of risks LLM pose, how do you mitigate those risks. But the problem is at a very ground level, where the security teams don't even know if LLMs is being used, and which leads to overlooked risks within the organization. And it's essential for organizations to be able to look at risk holistically, not just risk coming from your vulnerabilities, cloud misconfigurations, IAM, so on and so forth, but also to be able to understand the risks coming from your LLM workloads. The problem with LLMs is that they are extremely vulnerable. A potential attacker can craft a prompt that can potentially leak sensitive information from your LLM models. All of us have been using, whosoever is using LLMs within their organizations or within their products know that to be able to train LLMs, you need massive amount of data for a positive outcome from the LLM. And there have been attacks that using prompt injection, being able to disclose that sensitive information or training data, or the leak of the model itself. And there have been many instances in the recent past where the model itself, which is crown jewel for most LLM deployments, being hacked or leaked from within the interface that you've exposed to your users or to your customers. What is really important for us is to also understand the consequences of these potential attacks that can happen on your LLM deployment, starting with data and IP breach. Like I mentioned, if your training data is breached, then it means it really has a big impact on your organization, both in terms of brand reputation and financial cost. The financial cost here could be not just direct cost, dealing with the incident response of the data breach, but also a lot of indirect costs, such as legal fees, such as compensation for your customers, partners, employees, and so on and so forth. And this is just scratching the surface as LLM is progressing and the speed at which LLM is being deployed. All of these consequences are going to increase multifold. Now, what does it really mean to you? And I'm going to talk about the 5 key challenges of LLM deployments in your organizations and how you can potentially mitigate those. Starting with the first challenge is low visibility. I already talked about it, where organizations are not even aware if LLM is being deployed on their production environments. Second is the risk of model and data loss. This is really crucial, and we have sophisticated attacks already in place, which is leading to model and data loss. You won't believe, but within the Qualys install base globally, We have already detected more than 350,000 vulnerabilities that directly relate with AI and LLM. Next is increasing attack surfaces. I think the complexity here is LLMs are not just a piece of code or a piece of software. LLM is actually a combination of hardware, which is GPUs, combination of software, combination of personnel, and combination of data, which is essentially your intellectual property. So the challenge here is to not just protect it in a single attack surface, but to be able to look at the security of LLMs holistically. Next is low security maturity. I think I touched upon this point earlier as well, that this is a new technology and security teams are trying to catch up, and the pace at which this technology is growing is really rapid, and we want to have automation and tools in place that is evolving, if not faster, but at least at the same rate. And lastly, creating more security silos, because now you have one more security software that is doing your AI security on top of your cloud security solutions, endpoint security solutions, and so on and so forth. So some of these key challenges are being addressed. This is the last slide. My time is up. I'll just wrap it up in a minute. Some of these key challenges I'm going to talk about in this last slide, and how Qualys Total AI can address it. So starting with automatic detection of your AI workload. So Qualys Total AI can allow you to detect your LLM workloads deployed within your enterprise or infrastructure, starting from software packages to hardware deployed, to be able to run these complex workloads. Second is detecting the vulnerabilities on those workloads. So we have a 250 people threat research unit that constantly works on creating vulnerability signatures, and being one of the leaders in the vulnerability management category for almost 2 decades now, we have been one of the first in the market to be able to have over 1,000 detections related to AI and LLM, which our product Total AI can detect. Third is being audit ready. So all of these detections will be available as a part of your Qualys platform if you're using it already. And lastly, knowing the risk of model theft and the training data theft. So we are actually mapping all of these vulnerabilities to things like OWASP top 10 and other industry standards to really understand the risk of your AI workloads. All of this is being done by the same Qualys agent and scanner that is running in a lot of your organizations. All of this and much more is part of our Qualys Enterprise TruRisk platform. I would like to invite all of you to visit our booth so that we can give you a live demo and talk about it in detail. Thank you so much, everyone.